On today's episode of WatchJRGo, here's why you should never buy that cheap Mercedes 190e that you just saw on Marketplace, especially when it's got a few issues. What is going on, guys? I'm WatchJRGo, and today, like I said, we are back with my 1993 Mercedes-Benz 190e. And I love the way these cars look. I love the way they drive. I generally just love them. My great-grandma had a 190D, which was the diesel version. Very cool. All the Mercedes from this era, they all drive really well. And you see them pop up, and they're dirt cheap, and you're like, I should buy it. Well, I've got news for you. Maybe you should, maybe you should, maybe you shouldn't. In this case, it might have been an iffy buy. Now, like I said, when I bought this one in the first video, it had a title, but it did not have keys. And usually the title is the biggest of your problems, but it turns out when you buy a 190e with no keys, that's the biggest of your problems, and it isn't even close. This is a little bit of a disaster. I called in all of the favors. I called in the whole army. My usual locksmith, called him first, and I was like, hey, just got a 190e, all keys lost, I need you to come make one. And he said, no can do. And I know this guy is an expert lock picker. He decodes locks all the time. If I have a problem, he shows up, solves it immediately, right? GM cars with VATs, PATs, it doesn't matter what the system is. For the most part, he shows up, he can solve a key problem. And he was like, no chance. And I was like, isn't there a leashy so you could decode this? And he said, I don't think they make a leashy for these. And it turns out he might be right, because he told me to call who is considered the best locksmith in Wichita. They crack safes, they do all the like really high-end picking. Central Key and Safe. Obviously, anytime you call a locksmith in Wichita and they don't want to take something on, they refer you to them because they're the most expensive and they'll always get it done. And they said, no way. Right out of the gate, they just said, nope, we are not gonna do an old Mercedes. So they sent me to another guy that they said would have some luck with it. And he said that he's actually decoded one of these before, and he said it was the biggest disaster they ever dealt with, and now they won't take them on. So unfortunately, here I am. I've exhausted everybody. There's really no one else in the city to call after calling those three. They said, there's no chance we're decoding the Mercedes-Benz locks for you and trying to make keys. They were like, call Mercedes. And guess what? You can't call Mercedes because the title just came back. If I send it out, it'll be 3 months before the title comes back in my name, and then we could go get keys made. I don't want to wait 3 months. I know you guys don't want to wait 3 months. This car will be fully irrelevant by then. So the last locksmith I called said, change all the locks. And I was like, yeah, I guess it's possible. So the only answer, if you end up with one of these where you don't have keys, is to change every single lock cylinder. Now, I think there's only 4, right? You got ignition, driver, door. Obviously, the trunk on this one is destroyed, and we can't get it open no matter what. I don't even think there's an emergency way in. And yeah, okay, 4 lock cylinders on this car. So that's the reason that you shouldn't buy a 190e if it's cheap, especially if it says there are no keys. The second reason is because it's Bosch Jetronic. But I think we can get this thing running. And today we're gonna try to do that anyway. We're just gonna hammer the lock cylinder out of this thing. I don't know what it's gonna take, but we're gonna get the lock out, the ignition out, and try to make this thing turn over. Whether I have to disassemble the lock assembly out of the back, or if I can just find a connector and jump it behind the dash, anything like that. We're gonna do something so that we can get some power to the engine and hopefully crank the starter over and see what happens. I really thought we'd end up spending $50 to $100 and have a key, and then we could get this thing running from there, but there is no key for the 190e. Look how beautiful the M103 is though. Before we jump in, you see this, and like the wires look really nice. All this routing is beautiful. And you look in here and you're like, wait a minute, is this thing coil on plug? I mean, it's an antique, right? I think it's 1 year from getting an antique tag here in Kansas. And I looked at it and thought it had coil on plug ignition because it's so well done. And I was like, wait a minute, is this a distributor? Because it's got a coil wire. And then you pop this off, this front cover that makes the valve cover look really, really good. And there's a distributor. Mercedes, look at that. Unbelievably nice. I hope that front mount distributor works though. I bet it's expensive. All right, Now let's get into it. So here's the plan. We got the ignition switch here, and you can see I beat on it quite a bit already. What I did was take the air hammer with the cutting set. You know, it's got the one tooth back. Okay, it's like that, right? It's one tooth is back so you can hook stuff, and then it just cuts, it just peels metal out of the way. Well, I put it under here, stuck it in the spinner, and tried to cut up, nothing. So the spinner here is hardened steel, and these are always there so that when you try to attack the lock, it like just turns and makes your life really difficult, especially if you're trying to drill it, right? It messes with your drill because there's nothing for it to bite onto. Well, that is obviously spinning. What we're gonna do is take a cutoff wheel, I hope, and just cut the edge of the lock cylinder off. There's really no good way to get to any of the wiring behind the switch without disassembling the entire dash. They buried this thing so well you can't see any of the wiring. You literally can't see anything up under this dash. I'm sure they did that on purpose for security, but I'd say this car might be almost impossible to steal. So with that said, let's see what we can do. I got enough room with this cutoff wheel to get in here around the edge. If we can cut this on the radius, I think we can pry the spinner out of there, and then that'll let us finish attacking the lock, and maybe we can just pull the whole cylinder out and then turn it with a screwdriver. That's the hope. So at least it'll get us running for now, and we won't have to wait for parts. All right, I think we're in that fast. Cutoff wheel sure makes a big difference. Let's see if we can pry on it. Oh, wow, this hardened steel is no joke. It'll just end a screwdriver. I'm gonna put a little vertical cut. Hey, progress! All right, spinner, come on out. See if we can get under it. It's resilient, I'll tell you that much. I think we might be ending my screwdriver here.
Holy love.
Well, I think after a million hours of work, we might have made it. Come on. I know you're gonna leave. I got it broken in half. I had to cut the spinner in half, and the spinner is like way deeper than you could ever imagine. It's like over a 1/4 inch thick. Hardened tool steel, I think. Oh, wow. Finally. Finally. Finally, finally. She's out. Let's see if we can turn it with a screwdriver, if all of our work was worth it. All right, guys, this was probably a 30-40 minute attack, but the screwdriver now turns the ignition. No start, though. I don't know if I need to wiggle it or what. That's definitely on. Oh man, no winning in this car. The radio code's set. Again, without the original manual that somebody scribbled the code in, or the dealer, you're not getting that radio code. So now we're stuck without a radio too, and we made progress. At first I was only an accessory, I guess. So there's accessory, here's on. We just need to get to start. Oh, no fuel in the tank either. At least it looks like there's no fuel in the tank. I don't know for sure. We got it, it cranks. Now let's see if it starts. We know all the oil looks good, and we doubt the fuel system works at all. I'm actually about 100% sure it doesn't because of the fuel pump thing I mentioned in the first video, but let's spray some starting fluid in here. Run, run, run. Oh, come on. It started. Here we go again. One major problem down, and who hasn't always wanted to have that dumb screwdriver hanging out of the ignition? Remember they used to sell those keys you could get cut that had a screwdriver handle on them? That was pretty hilarious. But just don't get pulled over like that. If I get pulled over in this, we'll be in trouble. But at the same time, it runs, which is incredible. So running on starting fluid, it ran even longer with a little squirt of gasoline. Now we got to get the fuel injection figured out. I guess the tank's completely empty, but now that I can turn it, we can put it on the lift. Before we couldn't turn the steering wheel. So if you guys can imagine, I got this entire car in here by myself with a jack. It took maybe an hour to get the car positioned. So getting the steering wheel freed up is an incredible amount of progress, and we're gonna keep making progress on this thing until we're driving it. And hopefully, if those fuel pumps run, we're just like reconnecting them. I don't know what was going on, but they were hanging down underneath the car. And, you know, another bad sign, that gas gauge says it's 100% empty. So I bet it is. I bet she's empty. Anyway, that is it for today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to head on over to shop WatchJRGo.com for cool shirts just like this. And please like, share, subscribe, do whatever you want to do, and I will talk to you next time. Guys, the amount of cutting and work this took was just out of control. I think this Quinn is going to become a permanent fixture in this car. Obviously, there's like grinding residue on everything. But if we wipe all that off, it kind of did go everywhere. We had sparks flying in this thing. And then we put the keyring trim back on. Let's see, I need to pry down just a hair to get that right. Ooh, right there. There's like just 2 bolts holding in the lock cylinder, but then we put the keyring trim back. Honestly, it doesn't look that bad. You probably won't notice that being out of place, and of course, shove your screwdriver in, you're ready to rock. All right, we'll turn it off. I'll see if I can hunt down a radio code. I'm sure I can't, but it runs.